You have been told that saturated fat is dangerous, that it clogs your arteries, slows you down, and if you want to live longer, you should avoid it. But there is the problem. The generations of bodybuilders with the highest testosterone, dense muscle, tremendous physique, built their bodies on saturated fats. They ate steak, eggs, butter, and they looked fantastic. So they all must have been wrong, or everything you have been told is. Because right now, most of the people over 40 are doing exactly the opposite. They cut fat, they replace it with carbs. And you know that very well. That was apparently the healthiest diet. 60-70% carbs, only 10% fat. And then when people do that, they wonder why their testosterone drops, why the recovery slows, fat gain increases, and muscles, they stop responding. And this is not just the bad luck, it's biology. In this video, I'm going to show you why is saturated fat actually raw material for muscle growth, why modern nutrition avoids it, and why removing it is silently destroying your results. But most importantly, I'm going to show you what happens within your body when you replace saturated fat with the wrong type of fat. And this is where everything changes. You think that muscle growth starts in the gym, but it doesn't. Actually, it starts with hormones. And hormones, they don't come from proteins. They come from cholesterol. And this is what most people don't understand, that actually testosterone is built from cholesterol. Not carbs, not plant oils, not protein. And where do you get the most usable cholesterol? In saturated fats, in egg yolks, red meat, and animal fats. Now, here is the problem. Many influencers tell you that in order to start building muscles, you have to stop eating fat. So what happens? You train hard, you eat clean, apparently, and you avoid fat. And if you avoid saturated fat, your body has no raw materials to build hormones. So what it does, the body adapts and not in your favor. Now, low fat equals low testosterone, but nobody tells you that. Everyone is pushing for high carb, medium protein, low fat diet. And when dietary fat drops, your testosterone drops. So what happens then? Your recovery slows down, your strength plateaus, fat loss becomes harder, and your muscles become softer. And most people usually start blaming age, genetics, training, and the real issue is something that they don't see. They don't realize that all these unwanted symptoms actually come from low intake of saturated fat. Now, here is where the problem becomes even worse. Most people, when they cut fat, they replace it with something much worse. When people cut saturated fats, they usually replace it with seed oils, processed fats, and high-carb foods. And this is where the real problem starts. Because these fats and high-carb diets, they don't support hormone production. In fact, they can interfere with your testosterone production. And with this change, your body will have less cholesterol, low testosterone, higher insulin, and more fat storage gains. And instead of building muscles, you are going to shift into survival mode. And survival mode is not the mode in which you build muscle. And now something very important. Your hormones simply don't care about guidelines, because modern nutrition is built on population averages, not on performance, not muscle growth, not optimal hormones. So when guidelines say reduce saturated fat, they don't ask for, do you want to build muscle? Do you want high testosterone? Or do you want optimal energy? They are simply asking, how do we reduce risk across millions of people? And this is not the same goal, because the bodybuilder, an athlete, the man over 40 who is trying to build their muscles needs a different environment. And that environment requires hormonal support, not a restriction. But here is where most people get confused. They think that eating fat will make you fat, but fat doesn't make you fat. Eating fat does not automatically mean that you will gain fat. This is one of the biggest misconceptions in nutrition. You need to understand that the fat storage is primarily driven by insulin, and when insulin is high, your body stores fat. When insulin is controlled, your body can burn fat and build muscle. And this is what you want to achieve. I spoke about it in many videos. And when you control your insulin and you keep it relatively low, you will increase insulin sensitivity. Insulin sensitivity is the key factor for muscle growth, because high insulin sensitivity will allow the body to store efficiently optimal amount of amino acids and glucose into the muscle cell. If your insulin sensitivity is low, this is not going to happen. Most of the nutrients will be converted into body fat or simply used for energy, including amino acids, and you don't want that. Now, think about this. Low-fat diets are usually high-carb diets, which means insulin stays elevated throughout the day. If you eat few meals per day, which are made predominantly of carbohydrates, your insulin will be elevated throughout the day. If you do it every day, every week, every month, every year, you will enter that chronically elevated insulin and eventually hyperinsulinemia, which will lead to diabetes type 2 eventually. So where your insulin is high, your fat burning is reduced, which means muscle growth becomes inefficient. So the problem is never fat. The problem is actually that hormonal environment. So if you can control your insulin, the fat that you eat will never make you fat. So remember that. Now, this is another very important part for everybody over 40, because you need to understand when you are 20, your body can get away with sometimes junk food or not necessarily perfect diet. But after 40, that changes. Your body becomes less insulin sensitive naturally. It's slower to recover and also becomes less efficient hormonally. So now every nutritional mistake is amplified. If you could have got away with something when you were 20, now this is not going to happen. And if you removed saturated fat at this stage, you're not just slowing progress, you're blocking it. Because your body now doesn't just need calories. Your body now more than ever needs right building blocks. And saturated fat is one of the most important ones. Let us go back into the history of bodybuilding in 60s and 70s, even in 80s, in which period that I like to call golden era. Bodybuilders predominantly ate protein and fat. But that fat wasn't vegetable oils, wasn't hydrogenated fat. That fat came from steak, eggs, cottage cheese, full fat milk, all animal fats. They didn't avoid saturated fats. They relied on it. And what was the result? Results were bodies which were simply unmatched up till now. How did they do it? I explained it in so many videos. Obviously, high volume workouts and protein and fat. So the diets which were dominated by protein and fat were their backbone. Now, a lot of people will say, oh, but they use steroids. This is why they could have done it. No, it doesn't matter. Steroids or not, physiology doesn't change. When it comes to hormones and your hormonal response to food, which is the most important response to food, is not caloric efficiency, but is hormonal response, is critical, regardless of you being on steroids or not. Another thing to remember is that in golden era, people use much less steroids than they are using it now. So they relied more on training and proper nutrition in order to build those bodies, which were simply unmatched. How did they do it? Again, high protein, high fat. They never avoided saturated fat. And this also wasn't random, because everything started with Vince Gironda, Iron Guru, who advocated proven diet of steak and eggs. Every single one who came to his gym and who became his client, including countless number of Hollywood actors and Hollywood stars, and also every single bodybuilder in those days, people like Arnold Schwarzenegger, Lou Ferrigno, Frank Zane, Larry Scott, first Mr. Olympia, they all went there and they learned how to eat from Vince Gironda. What was the advice? Steak and eggs, 2 to 3 times per day. That's it. You keep repeating it. And this was the most effective diet when it comes to optimal hormonal balance for muscle growth, which means people will produce naturally high amount of testosterone because of the cholesterol, which was abundant in meat and eggs. Everybody learned from Vince Gironda. Everybody did it. Everybody succeeded it. Even people who didn't go there, who didn't learn from him, they learned from other people. They learned from Arnold. Arnold relied on a diet. And not just Arnold, many others, also European bodybuilders like Serge Nubre and many people in UK as well in those days. So everybody followed their diet and they all succeeded. One of the major reasons for that is not just very high quality protein found in meat and eggs, but also cholesterol and saturated fat, which were found in meat and eggs. So you see, this wasn't random. This was structured diet that showed results over and over and over again. And now guess what? Even modern bodybuilders more and more rely on meat and eggs, whole eggs. Even the bodybuilders in 90s who were primarily eating chicken and rice and egg whites, now they are admitting that you should have actually eaten more egg yolks in those days. They would do much better simply because of abundance of vitamins and minerals and, again, cholesterol, which will help them produce more testosterone in the periods of no steroids, so in those gaps between steroid cycles. So now everybody knows that, and they're shifting more and more towards it. And especially if you're a natural bodybuilder, if you don't have any exogenous support to your hormones, you don't take anything, you're natural, you rely on your natural production of testosterone and growth hormone, that means that you have to be much more careful about your diet, and you will definitely benefit much more if you rely on meat, eggs, oily fish, and animal fat. Especially in this case, we are talking about saturated fats and cholesterol, simply because of testosterone production. Testosterone, again, is the hormone which is made of cholesterol. So golden era bodybuilders maintain their shape year-round. So they understood something that modern bodybuilders don't want to understand. And this is simply that the diet, which is high in protein and fat, will give you stable energy. You don't have to eat 6, 7, 8 times per day. You can eat 2, 3 times per day and you will still have the same results. But extra benefit, you will stay in better hormonal balance year-round, and also you will be leaner. Because when you eat protein and fat, you don't have those insulin spikes, you don't have fat storage, your body is extremely insulin sensitive, so most of the amino acids and glucose necessary to feed your muscle cells will be there and will be supplied to your muscle cells without any restriction. So your receptors will constantly be sensitive, open. This is the thing, and this is the difference. Now bodybuilders get fat in the off season, and then they have those cycles of off season and pre-competition season. But you should always be in good shape. You don't have to be shredded year round, but you should always be in very decent shape. So you can see your six-pack, your legs should be split. You should not have any fat hanging on your sides. And this is simply easiest way to achieve that is the diet which is high in protein and saturated fat and low in carbohydrates. So now you understand that muscles are not necessarily just built in the gym. They are built through hormones, and hormones require cholesterol, saturated fat, and proper nutrition. If you remove that, everything else will become much harder. Follow this type of diet, and suddenly training becomes much better, recovery improves, and muscle responds again. And this is why what worked 40, 50 years ago still works today. So after 40 years in bodybuilding, competing 46 times, winning 17 titles, training over 3,500 clients, I have published for you 12 ebooks which are loaded with detailed information about everything you always wanted to know about bodybuilding, and obviously about best diet that will support your muscle growth and fat loss. So if you want to expand your knowledge and finally start growing and burning body fat, simply click on that link down in the comments and you can download my ebooks. Let me remind you once again that I have recently published my bodybuilding blueprint course, in which I personally demonstrate and explain the most effective exercises for major muscle groups. The course is made of 8 videos and it will give you everything that you need in order to understand how to train with perfect form, meaning that you will stop wasting your time in the gym, avoid injuries, and finally start growing muscles. So if you're interested, again, click in the link below in the comments and you can access my bodybuilding blueprint course. Guys, if you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to my channel, like the video, share the video, and send me your comments. And until the next video, I wish you all the best.